Hey guys, what's up? It's Luke again. So have you guys ever like had enough people believe something about you that it kind of became like like who you are? Like I think back about this time in middle school. I was in seventh grade, and it's easy for me to say that was the worst year of my entire school life. So I was at this small private school called Jesus Chapel, and it should have been like a really great place to be, but instead it was just kind of like a nightmare for me. So the whole school was kind of wrapped around sports, and even though it wasn't important, it was really important to the kids there and the teachers and the faculty there. This little tiny private school league. They didn't even play real football. It was six-man football, and if you weren't able to play sports, then you didn't matter at the school. And so I was really psyched because I had been into sports before, especially like going into my middle school years. I was like all about basketball, baseball, and football. That was just what I wanted to do, and I couldn't wait to play tackle football. And then right away, first, we weren't even in school. We were like practicing without pads, seventh grade football, doing a wind sprint, and I stepped in a hole and dislocated my knee, and that just started this like cascading series of injuries all throughout seventh grade. I was basically on crutches all seventh grade. Had to end up having knee surgery to replace or to rebuild my knee, and just pretty miserable in that regard because I was like watching my everything I look forward to is just slipping away, and then to make it worse, it was like all my friends just sort of started picking on me a ton and calling me like a loser, and that I was weak, and that I was a crybaby for getting hurt and fragile. And funny enough, I actually just a couple hours ago, I was on a run and rolled an ankle pretty bad. Like it's hard for me to walk right now, and it's so quickly those same kind of things. Like, oh man, I suck. I'm super fragile. I can't do sport. Why am I even trying to be active? Those same voices from back then kind of come back, just like to a much lesser degree. But back then it was like pretty gnarly, and then they started like systematically sort of bullying me and picking on me. And I remember there was this kid that would sit behind me in one of my classes, and he just hit me nonstop. And if I would say like, "Ow, that hurt," he'd be like, "No, it didn't." And I just sort of felt like I had to take it because he was actually pretty good at sports, and everyone really liked him, including teachers. And I just didn't like my PE teacher. The week before I had to go into surgery for my knee, made me run laps around the school because he didn't believe that I was actually hurt. And so it was just stuff like that. And that happens enough, and you begin to think like, I am a loser. You know, I am worthless, and I am sort of like just not good enough. And that sort of kind of became my identity. I tell you that story because the good news is that stuff's not true. Like it's just not true. It's just something somebody thought of me for a while, but it's not who I am. And the better news is like Jesus sees through all of those labels. He sees through all the things we believe about ourselves, all the things other people have put on us, and he sees us for who we really are. And he loves us like the way we really are. He even loves the like false stuff that we put around ourselves. Like he will love us through that because he knows the person that we are on the inside is intrinsically valuable, and he created us to love us. And so I'm going to tell you guys a story in the Bible about, it's a pretty intense story about a guy that Jesus meets who kind of has the same situation, but turned up to like 11. So it happens that Jesus had just been teaching a bunch of people by the side of this lake, and there's so many people gathered around him because everyone wanted to come where Jesus was back then all the time. Like people were just super excited to be where Jesus was. And so it gets dark, and it's getting dark, and Jesus tells his disciples, like, hey, let's go let's go to the other side of the lake. And so where they were, going to the other side, they're at the Sea of Galilee. Where they were, that would take them out of like Jewish territory into this land known as the Decapolis, which was like these 10 Greek cities. And so they weren't Jewish cities, and it was sort of like a place that good Jews didn't really want to go very often. It wasn't like a standard thing to just kind of cruise over there. So and then they leave in the middle of the night, which is even weirder. Like there's all these superstitions about being on a boat at night. It like wasn't really awesome. And so while they're traveling over the Sea of Galilee, a crazy storm kind of whips up, and which is normal for the Sea of Galilee. It's surrounded by mountains, and sometimes that happens there. And so this huge storm comes through, and the disciples, who most of whom were fishermen by trade, so they're used to being out on the ocean, start freaking out. And they're like, Jesus, what are you going to do? The storm's like, we're going to drown. And they look, and they're like bailing water out, working as hard as they can just to keep the boat afloat. And they look over, and Jesus passed out. Like, he's just snapping through the whole thing. Now, you got to remember, Jesus had been doing a ton, so dude was tired. And he's able to be calm and just rest. And so he's asleep. So the disciples, they get angry at Jesus. They get angry at him. And they end up like waking him up, and they're like, dude, you don't even care. We are literally about to drown. Which, if the disciples who were fishermen by trade, used to be on the ocean, thought they were going to drown, they were probably in a really gnarly situation, about to drown. They're like, Jesus, we're about to drown, and you don't even care. And so Jesus ends up just telling the wind and the waves to calm down. He like yells at the wind and the waves, and it goes dead glassy. No wind, no waves, just still. And the disciples freak out. And so all happens right before where we're about to go. So they're cruising through. The disciples are now like, who are we with? What happened here? He just like, that's never been done before. What is going on? So they're kind of spooked out. It's like beginning to be dawn. And they get to the other side, and they start hearing all of this screaming. And not like a little girl screaming or whatever, but like terrifying shrieking. And so that's where we're going to pick up the story. So the Bible tells us that they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not a Bible scholar. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Now can you imagine that? It says night and day. Like he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Like this was a guy who used to have friends, who used to have a family, and then this situation came on him where he was demonized by this impure spirit and just tortured by this spirit, and now he was cast off from his home and from everyone he knew. They forced him out. They basically tortured him. I mean, can you imagine? They were trying to chain him up, but he kept breaking the chains. They were trying to subdue. They couldn't hold him still. They eventually were like, "You're dead to us," and they banished him to the caves, and this man, or to the tombs, and this man became so negative about himself and who he forgot who he was, and got to the point where that felt like home, where living with dead people felt like home, because the people that he knew and cared about all said that he was dead to them. He probably began to just feel dead inside, and this poor guy is just like a zombie man living in the tombs with dead people, and totally, like, if you don't know that he would have been as dirty and gross and barely recognizable as human as possible. I mean, He's cutting themselves with stones and just walking about at night screaming. So this man sees Jesus. And he says when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran up and fell on his knees in front of Jesus. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." And then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," the man replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. This man didn't even tell Jesus what his name was. He told Jesus what his condition was. I doubt this man's name was not Legion. Maybe it was Matthew, maybe it was Jude. I mean, it could have been Levi, or it could have, I don't know. It could have, it wasn't Legion. Legion was his condition. His condition was that he was being terrorized by a ton of impure spirits, by a ton of demons. And that had become so said over him, and he was just lost in that became his identity, his name, even though that wasn't his name. And so Jesus stands there. The other thing that's crazy is this man ran up to Jesus, and I bet, like, Jesus didn't flinch. I bet his disciples were like, what the heck? Like, they just went through this traumatic experience on the sea, and now this, like, scary demon guy is running at them. I bet they're, like backing up, and Jesus just stands there. The guy falls at his feet, and Jesus asks him what his name is. Yeah, oh man, Jesus is freaking awesome. Like, he's not scared away at all by this man and by his history and his story or any of that. He just wants to know him, and he wants his man to know how valuable he is. So it goes on. And it just so happened that there were a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby. And the demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs and allow us to go into them." So Jesus gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd of about 2,000, that's a lot of pigs. Can you imagine the noise and stuff? The hill of about 2,000 in number, they rushed down Stink Bank into the lake and drowned. So the demons, like, they just wanted to kill something. They just wanted to destroy something. They had been destroying this guy's life for who knows how long. And then they go into the pigs and just destroy them right away. A whole herd. Which, in fact, if you think about it, like, that many pigs, that's probably what the nearby town, that was probably their source of economy, their source of money was pig farming. And now the demons not only destroyed the pigs, but also probably made life really hard for a lot of people in that town. And guys, the Bible says elsewhere that the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy. And Jesus came to give life to full. This story really puts that on display. The demons went into the pigs and killed the pigs, and also probably destroyed a lot of things for people in that town. And we're going to see that Jesus totally brings life out of this man. So that happens. I can't imagine the squealing of pigs as they're drowning, and just the noise and the smell. It must have been just horrible. So then those tending the pigs ran off and reported this to town and the countryside. So they just go and they're telling everyone. And people from everywhere came out to see what happened. And when they came to see Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. So we got this scene where everyone's like, dude, these pigs just like, they're not like the man is just sort of like a footnote. They're like, all these pigs just drowned. You guys got to come out and see this. They come out, like it says, like people are coming from everywhere. They come out and they see this man. And they see probably dead pigs just floating in the water everywhere. Gross. And then they see the man sitting there. And I love this. It says dressed, because before he was naked, like naked and cutting himself and just, you know, in his right mind. He was sitting there dressed in his right mind. First of all, that means that as soon as Jesus restored this guy, he he was cared for like a human. Jesus and his disciples probably had to take some of their clothes and give them to him. You know, like he didn't have clothes. It's not like he had a day bag packed for himself. The disciples gave him some of their clothes. Jesus probably gave him maybe one of his cloaks or something. And this man was dressed. He got to experience right away being accepted and being cared for and being loved. And he's in his right mind. But still the townspeople are like, dude, no. Like that Jesus guy, he's some sort of wizard or something. Like they would never have thought. Remember, this is not a Jewish place. They don't worship God. This is like Greek people. They're like, he is some sort of weird magician. He needs to go. He's just going to cause havoc. He already killed all these pigs. They don't have this idea that the demons killed the pigs. They think Jesus did. And they're like, this guy has got to get out of here. So Jesus is like, okay, I'm out. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged with him to go. He wanted to go. But Jesus said to him, go home and to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. I love this part. At first, when I was a kid and would read this story, it used to bug me so much. I thought Jesus was just being a prick. Why couldn't Jesus let this guy come with him? I didn't understand that. It seemed really mean to me, because I was also thinking, like, Jesus telling this guy to go back to the very people that didn't want him in the first place. Like, he's telling him to go back. It would be like the last place I ever want to go back to is my 7th grade year. Jesus is telling this guy, hey, go back there and let them see the difference. This is one of those places where I think Jesus saw through this guy's condition to who he really was. And he saw this guy as a leader. He saw this guy as someone who could tell a story that would change lives. And Jesus didn't want this guy to just get wrapped up in being like dependent, just just following Jesus. He was like, you need to go and put me on display out there because you can do that. And so this guy does. This guy goes back home. Guys, that's powerful. He goes back home. His home, what he thought was home, was the tombs. There ain't anybody to tell him about anything in a graveyard. There's just a bunch of dead bodies. Jesus told him to go to his real home. And he did. And the next time, like a few chapters later, Jesus goes back to this place, and it's a totally different experience. Instead of the people trying to get Jesus to leave right away, they start bringing out like deaf people and sick people and other people who are like being tortured by demons and just crazy stuff. They are bringing them to Jesus because that guy's story, he told them all about what Jesus had done for him, how much Jesus had loved him, how Jesus wasn't afraid of him, how Jesus restored him. And they all began to believe Jesus because of his story. This guy was like the first real like evangelist or whatever, like person to tell other people about Jesus. I love it. The guy who was the demon-possessed dude, Legion, turns into just this amazing person. And I tell us that story because this is a story that I need to hear. It is too often that I believe all the lies about myself. You know, like I believe all the things that either people have said negatively about me. It's funny enough, like if you think about the power that ex-girlfriends have or ex-boyfriends, like they have a certain power, and those lies or those feelings that you had negative when you were going through certain relationships can come back and really just like torment you your whole life. It's funny how often those things kind of seem to be who I am as far as I'm concerned. And to know that Jesus sees through all that. He sees through my biggest mistakes, my biggest failures, my biggest sins, my biggest like hang-ups. The fact that like I can't run down the street without rolling my ankle. He sees through that, and he sees me for who I really am. And then he gives me something to do to put him on display. You guys, it's the same with you. No matter what you're dealing with, some of you guys are probably dealing with something pretty gnarly. Some of you guys probably have reputations that are extremely hurtful and that put you at a distance from the people that you most care. Some of you guys may have that thing that you're like, if someone else finds this out about me, I'm socially done. My family will kick me out. Like, no one will love me if that becomes who I am. You guys, the best thing is that Jesus, like, he knows all those things. That thing, he knows about it. He knows you completely. And he loves you. And that is not your name. That thing is not your name. You are a son, you are a daughter of the Most High King. You are a son and daughter of the God that created the universe and everything in it. And he knows you. He knows your name and he loves you. That is the truest thing about you. Not whatever else people are saying about you or whatever else you tend to say about yourself. The truest thing about you is that Jesus loves you the way you are right now, not the way you should be. And he will never stop loving you. And he sees something bigger in you than you see in yourself. And he has a life for you, a real life for you that is full, not easy. Guys, following Jesus is not always easy. And sometimes it's actually quite hard, but it's good. It's so freaking good. And he has something so awesome for you. And all it takes is for you to accept what he says about you to be true, not the other stuff. And accept that you don't have to earn it, but you are free to receive it. And that will change you, just like it did this man Legion. Remember, he went from demon-possessed, naked, cutting himself, living in the tombs, to sitting there with Jesus and his disciples, fully clothed with the clothes that they gave him because they loved him and accepted him. And then he went on to tell everyone in that area about Jesus. And next time Jesus came, they were super excited to see him. The demons tried to bring death and destruction. And Jesus turned all that around and brought real and true life. That's what Jesus does. Jesus makes the wrong things right. And he makes life just sprout up all over the place. And Jesus wants to do that in your life. All right. Thanks for watching this, if anyone did. And I hope you know how awesome you are and how much Jesus loves loving you.